Be sure to sign the attendance sheet. Includes your email and phone if you want us to contact you and let you know of upcoming events. Remember to place your tithes and offerings in the basket up front here during the praise and worship portion of our service. Make checks payable to Beth, Shalom, Rome, and you can also pay via PayPal. The QR code is on your bulletin. Your bulletin also has other information like Torah portions, special events, QR codes for our YouTube and Facebook pages. So keep that in mind as well. The men will be meeting this Tuesday. Until further notice, it will be at 6 o'clock, and we're using the Zoom application. We had a good introductory meeting last week, or this past Tuesday, and had some good participation. So we're looking forward to good things happening there. And I do have a book right here for anybody who needs one. And they're in the back, so you don't have to ask for it. Just go back there and grab one, all right? We're grateful for all you men. Today's Torah portion is Numbers chapter 13, verse 1 to chapter 15, verse 31. It's called Shalach, or Send on Your Behalf. Don't forget, we will now be meeting every single Saturday right here at Unity Christian Church. Amen. Next service will be on July the 2nd. We will have a Torah service today. Remember, as we process the Torah around the sanctuary, we're not worshiping the Torah. We're worshiping the God who gave us the Torah. You feel free to, men use their tzitzit to touch the Torah and kiss it with their lips, or you can take a Bible, touch the Torah. Don't use your bare hands. Don't forget that July 9th will be the baby shower for Abigail, as well as the going away party for the Zamsteins. Let's bless them by going to myregistry.com. And for those who are technically challenged, I have a little tutorial on how to do that. So if you'll see up at the very top left, this is step one. Go to www.myregistry.com. And then step two is type the Zamstein name right in there, in that little box. And then click on the hourglass symbol. Then step 4 is click on the baby registry link there for the Zamsteins. Step 5 is select a gift or gifts. You can select more than one. And then you go to a payment portal which will accept your credit card. And I think that's it. Oh, is that right? You can go to walmart.com and get on a page there that that'll direct you to here. Okay, very good. Thanks, Diane. We're glad to see Jeffrey and Diane Douglas here today. It's been a long road for them, and they've been through, not over yet, that's right. Jeffrey still has another surgery and some more recovery to do. So continue to keep him in prayer, and for there not to be any infection, because that's the biggest concern after a surgery, is to have infection, and the recovery process is long and difficult. Physical therapy is tortuous, really. So please continue to keep them in prayer. We're glad you're here, guys. Also, July 17th is the party that we're having for loading the Zamstein's truck. They're going to be departing on the 18th. So we are recommending to be there sometime after 9 o'clock for moving it. I will be there. Mark Hamilton will be here. Troy Elliott, Stan, and whoever else wants to be there. We've got some things. I guess the most important things are like the refrigerator and washer and dryer. And if you do have dollies or hand trucks, please bring them, because it'll make a lot easier work. There's a lot of heavy boxes that we'll need to move. So the people who were there to help move into the house will remember we had a lot of boxes, right? So remember that. And still also, I'd like to remind everybody that the Zamsteins still have a washer and dryer for sale very reasonably. They can't take it with them, and they need to get rid of it before they leave. So if anybody needs a washer and dryer, knows anybody who could need a washer and dryer, please contact Abigail or Lavi about arranging to pick that up from them. Want to again thank all the service volunteers who helped today. We had some amazing help. Thank you, guys. Give yourselves a big hand. All right? Oh, come on. Come on. Bless you guys. Okay. So let's see what else we have. Oh, I wanted to make sure that the women know that their restroom door does not lock from the inside. So if you're uncomfortable, take somebody with you to stand outside the door, or in the future, we'll have some type of a sign that you can post on the door that says occupied. If you still feel uncomfortable, please, feel free to bring somebody with you to stand outside the door. I mean, I don't think anybody here is intent on invading the, huh? You could use the men's room, yeah. It's clean. It is. It's clean. As far as men's rooms go. Yeah, men, never mind. So that's it for the announcements.
So, ladies, all three of us, four of us, it just kind of doesn't seem right that the guys are meeting for Bible study and we're not yet. So I was just talking with Jane. I think we'll probably start in the fall with everything that's been going on, and we'll try to start something soon. So, but if you have any ideas, I'm very open to hearing them. Okay, so the Torah Parsha is Numbers 13. Yeah, Numbers 13. And it talks a little bit about when the princes of the tribes were sent to the soon-to-be promised land, and only 2 of them came back with a good report. The others came back and they were scared to death. And that kind of upset God. He did not really like that. In fact, he made some threats. I'm not going to say any more. But anyway, but Moses cried out on behalf of the people. And I thought about that, is that we think about everything that's going on in this world, and, we have a tendency to say, judge them, but God is, and, maybe God would, but maybe what we should be doing is saying, just inquiring on his loving kindness and his mercy and his grace. So that is why I chose Psalm 86. And this is technically a lament psalm, but it ends so wonderfully. So Psalm 86. Does this thing lock? There we go. A prayer of David. Turn your ear, Adonai, and answer me, for I am weak and needy. Watch over my soul, for I am godly. You are God. Save your servant who trusts in you. Be gracious to me, my Lord, for to you I cry all day. Gladden the heart of your servant, for to you, my Lord, I lift up my soul. For you, my Lord, are good, and ready to forgive and full of mercy to all who call upon you. Give ear, Adonai, to my prayer. Listen to the voice of my supplications. In the day of my trouble, I call upon you, for you will answer me. There is none like you among the gods, and my Lord, there are no deeds like yours. All nations you have made will come down and bow down before you, my Lord, and they will glorify your name. For you are great and do wonders. You alone are God. Teach me your way, Adonai, that I may walk in your truth. Give me an undivided heart to fear your name. I praise you, O Lord my God, with my whole heart and glorify your name forever. For great is your loving kindness toward me. You have delivered my soul from the lowest part of Sheol. God, the proud have risen up against me, and a gang of ruthless people have sought my life, and have not set you before them. But you, my Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, full of love and truth. Turn to me and be gracious to me. Give your strength to your servant and save the son of your maidservant. Make me a sign for good, so that those who hate me may see it and be ashamed. For you, Adonai, have helped me and comforted me.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Terry. Now, anybody that has a shofar wants to come forward?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua, one in the olive tree. Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua's love. Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua, one in the olive tree. One in Messiah, one in Yeshua's love. Help us, Father, to love one another with humble hearts, forgiving each other. Heal our wounds, bind us together, so the world might believe. Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua, one in the olive tree. Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua's love. One in Yeshua's love. Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua, one in the olive tree. Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua's love. Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua, one in the olive tree. Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah, one in Yeshua's love. Help us, Father, to love One in Yeshua's love. One in Yeshua's love. One in Yeshua's love. Sing it all together. One in Yeshua's love. 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 Oh, 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 oh. One in Yeshua's love. 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 Sing it all together. Comes the raging storm, the one who walks upon the sea. Earth and heaven are your own, yet you're watching over me. How majestic is your name, there is none like you. There is none like you. Together we proclaim the power of your name, 'cause there is none like you. Who can stand before your throne? power of your name, 'cause there is none like you.
Ramako goyim, Ramako goyim, Adonai, Ramako goyim, Ramako goyim, Adonai. Shamayim kevodo, Hashamayim, Al Hashamayim kevodo, high above all nations, high above all nations, is the Lord, high above all nations, so high above all nations, is the Lord, above the heavens, above the heavens is His glory. Above the heavens is His glory. Above the heavens is His glory. Al Hashemayim kevodo.
Praise adore.
light by day, the moon and stars to guide the night. He stirs the sea to call the rolling waves, creation's master. Scattered far and wide, now he gathers all before him to praise the Lord, to praise Adonai.
All right, please rise for the Matovu. Matovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Baruch et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. Bless the Lord, the Blessed One.
Blessed is the Lord, the Blessed One, for all eternity.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, asher natan lanu et derech Yeshua HaMashiach Yeshua. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us the way of salvation in Messiah Yeshua. Amen. All right, and we're going to, east is kind of this way, I think, right? Towards that corner? Okay. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire, and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your heart, and the frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. We're going to move into the Torah portion of our service now. Vayehi b'nsoah Aaron v'yomeh Moshe Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha Ki b'tzion tetzei Torah Ki b'tzion tetzei Torah u'devar Adonai Mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Israel B'kedushato. When the ark would travel, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. Let them that hate you flee from before you. For from Zion will go forth the Torah and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in his holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel. All right, we're going to have the blessing of the children now.
If you will raise your hand of blessing. We got one here. But we're blessing all our children, whether they're here or not, always, right? We thank you, Lord, for all the children you have brought to this community, and we ask for your blessing on them, for their health, for their safety, and, Lord, that they would come to know you early and seek after you all the days of their life. In Yeshua's name.
Come, let's go up to the mountain of the Lord.
Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of the God of Jacob.
Let's go up to meet our God.
Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of the God of Jacob. And the Lord will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. We will walk in his footsteps, and he will teach us his way.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach Elam Vaed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Bless the Lord, the Blessed One.
Blessed is the Lord, the Blessed One for all eternity.
Blessed is the Lord, the Blessed One for all eternity. Blessed are you, O Lord, our God, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all peoples and given us his Torah.
Blessed are you, O Lord, King of the universe.
Okay. This one I actually remember the tune for, because this was my bar mitzvah portion.
Sing it, brother.
Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, shalach lecha anoshim, ve'aturu et eretz Canaan, asher ani noten, livnei Yisrael ish echad, limate avotaiv tishlachu kol, nasi kahem. Vayishlach otam Moshe mimidbar paran, al pi Adonai kulam anashim, Rashi b'nei Yisrael hema. We need like blocks. Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send forth men, if you please, and let them spy out the land of Canaan, that I give the children of Israel. 1 man each from his father's tribe shall you send, every one a leader among them. Moses sent them forth from the wilderness of Paran at the Lord's command. They were all distinguished men, heads of the children of Israel were they. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and planted eternal life in our midst.
Blessed are you, O Lord, giver of the Torah.
Zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai miyad Moshe.
This is the Torah that Moses placed for the children of Israel at the command of the Lord with Moses' hand.
Etzayim hi lemachzikim ba v'tom keha meushar teracheha darkei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. It is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and to those who support it are praiseworthy. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Bring us back, Lord, to you, and we shall come. Renew our days as of old. Okay, you ready for Parsha in 60 seconds?
Shalom and welcome to the Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Numbers 13:1 through 15:41. It's called Shalach, which means send. So God tells Moses to send one of each of the 12 tribes of Israel to scout the land of Canaan. Among the scouts were Caleb and Joshua. They enter the land and cut down a branch with a huge cluster of grapes as well as some pomegranate and figs. They report to Moses that the land is very good. 10 of the spies claim that there are giants in the land, while Joshua and Caleb agree that it's not a big deal. The people freak out and try to stone the leaders, when all of a sudden God shows up and complains about the people to Moses. God threatens to strike them with pestilence, but instead God pardons them and commands them to wander for 40 years. After being commanded to go back into the wilderness, a small group decide to take a land without God. They fail. God tells Moses how to do flour and oil sacrifice and how to make offerings for accidental sin. A man violates Shabbat by gathering sticks and is put to death. God tells Moses to use string as a reminder to keep the law. Today, the string is known as tzitzit. And that is Shalach in 60 seconds.
Okay, Parshat Shalach. Numbers 13:1 through 15:41. The Haftorah is Joshua 2, and we'll see how they're related. So as he said, this is about the 12 spies that were sent. So let's think about some things here. You notice when I read the Torah in English, the translation from Chumash, God didn't command to send forth. He said, send forth if you please. That's the translation. So the question is, on whose initiative were the spies sent out? If you read just Numbers 13, it seems like it's by a divine command. God spoke to Moses saying, send you men that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm giving the children of Israel. 1 man per tribe shall you send, each a prince among them. However, 40 years later, when Moses recounts this event in Deuteronomy 1, he says to the people, you approached me and said, let us send men before us that they may search out the land and bring us back word regarding the road by which we shall go up and the cities we shall enter. The thing was favorable in my eyes, and I took 12 men from among you, 1 man per tribe. According to the commentaries, they reconcile these two because of the tone that God takes. The initial idea was the people. Moses then consulted with God, and God said, go ahead. Send them as you see fit. Thus, the spies' mission while receiving divine consent was a human-started endeavor, born of the desire of the people and dispatched because it was favorable in the eyes of Moses. The result was a tragic setback in the course of Jewish history, to the point where we don't know the exact date, but it's believed that the date that all this happened is the same date that both the temples were destroyed. Spies brought back a most demoralizing report and caused the people to lose faith in God's promise of the land of Israel as their eternal heritage. The entire generation was then deemed unfit to inherit the land, and it was decreed they would live out their lives in the desert. Only 40 years later did Moses' successor Joshua lead a new generation across the Jordan River into the Promised Land. It should be noted that Joshua and Caleb were the only two spies to speak in favor of conquering the land, and the only two men of the entire generation to enter it. By the way, the time they entered it, Joshua was 60 and Caleb was 80. Because at the time of this time, when they're first sent out, Joshua was 20 and Caleb was 40. Up until that time, God imparted specific directives to Moses and the people of Israel virtually every step of the way. The case of the spies was the first instance to which God said, I'm not telling you exactly what to do as you see fit. Should this not have set off a warning light for Moses? Obviously, he was well aware of the risks involved when embarking on the course of do as you see fit. For a man to strike out on his own without precise instructions from on high, and with only his finite and subjective judgment as a compass, is to enter a minefield strewn with possibilities for error and failure. However, since Moses handpicked the leaders he sent, he was probably hoping that they would seek God's guidance along the way, rather than only going under their own judgment. He assumed that these people that he picked would follow God's judgment as they went, and not just go on themselves. And he was unfortunately wrong. It doesn't say that that was what he was thinking. That's my inference, but it did say that he handpicked them. So my understanding is that he expected them to follow God as they went. We know 10 of the men came back with mixed reports. They did all acknowledge the land was good, but they also said it was too dangerous to live in. It said they traveled and returned to Moses, Aaron, and the entire community of Bnei Israel at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran. They gave their report to them in the entire assembly. They showed the land's fruit. They gave their account to him and said, we went into the land where you sent us. Indeed, it is flowing with milk and honey, and this is some of its fruit. Except the people living in the land are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. And we even saw sons of Anak there, Anak being a giant. Amalek is living in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites are living in the mountains, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the banks of the Jordan. The Hittites, by the way, were the only army of the time that could have matched Egypt. So just for reference, the reason why the Hittites were so powerful is, and the Philistines weren't a presence, they weren't around the Philistines. The Hittites and the Philistines, the reason they were so powerful is those were the only two cultures that had been able to make iron weapons. So Hittites and Philistines were the only ones that knew how. They actually both came from Greece. The Hittites and the Philistines both came from Greece. And Greece had developed that technology before. So it was very scary that the Hittites were there to them. But then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we should definitely go up and capture the land, for we can certainly do it. But the men who'd gone up with him said, we can't attack these people because they're stronger than we are. They spread among Bnei Israel a bad report about the land they had explored, saying, the land through which we passed to explore devours its residents. Now they're just making things up. All the people we saw there are men of great size. Again, they saw one or two giants, and now they said all the people there are giants. We also saw there the Nephilim, who are the descendants of the sons of Anak, were said to be descendants of the Nephilim. Nephilim were the sons of God before the flood. It was believed that they were the first giants. I don't believe that they were the actual Nephilim, but they saw giants and said, it must be the Nephilim, they're stronger than us. We seem like grasshoppers in our eyes as well as in their eyes. Now, just so you know, the giants of the time, Goliath was short for a giant. He was about 9 feet tall. He was considered the shortest of the giants. So you're talking people who are maybe 10 to 12 feet tall as the giants, not the 40-foot tall people you think of when you think of giants. But still, imagine someone who would stand in this room and their head would touch the ceiling. That's what they mean by giants. Now, it's important here to note some lineage. I've mentioned before, but Caleb was not born Jewish. He was a convert. He was a Kenizzite. And yet he showed himself faithful enough to be chosen as the representative of the entire tribe of Judah. More than that, he was one of only 2 to bring a good report back. Him for Judah and Joshua for Ephraim. And he was vehement in claiming that God would allow them to overcome all things. 40 years later, at age 80, he was the oldest one to enter the promised land. And 5 years after that, when he was 85, he conquered the city of Hebron. Because Hebron was the area he scouted out, and he said, I want that. And 45 years later, at age 85, in Joshua 14, said the children of Israel approached Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, said to him, you know the word that the Lord spoke to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea concerning me and you. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of Adonai, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him back word as was in my heart. Nevertheless, my fellows that went up with me made the heart of the people melt with fear. But I fully followed Adonai my God. So Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and your children forever, because you fully followed Adonai our God. So now, behold, Adonai has kept me alive just as he said these 45 years since the time Adonai spoke this word to Moses, while Israel was journeying in the wilderness. And behold, I am 85 years old today. I'm still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so is my strength now, for war and for going out and coming in. Now therefore give me the hill country about which Adonai spoke on that day. For you heard on that day how the Anakim were there, as well as great fortified cities. Perhaps Adonai will be with me, and I will drive them out just as Adonai has spoken. That perhaps there, I think, it's an English thing. It's a little more certain than just perhaps. So Joshua blessed him, and he assigned Hebron to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his portion. Hebron, by the way, is a very large walled city. Therefore, Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this day, because he followed Adonai, the God of Israel, fully. Now, the name of Hebron formerly was Kiriath Arba, for Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim. So not only is this a big walled city, this is a big walled city whose king was the biggest giant. And Caleb says, God promised me that, I'm going to get it. At age 85. Now Caleb, son of Jephunneh, he gave a portion among the children of Judah, command of Adonai to Joshua, Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron. By the way, Hebron is also the city closest to which the cave that Abraham bought, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, where Isaac and Rebekah are buried, and where Jacob and Leah are buried. It's currently in what's called the West Bank. So Caleb drove them out, the 3 sons of Anak. So he drove out 3 giants, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. Then he went up from there against the inhabitants of Debir. The name of Debir formerly was Kiriath Sefer. So he took the city of Hebron, whose king was the largest of the giants, and he drove out 3 more giants. And then he said, I will give my daughter Achsah as a wife to the one who attacks Kiryas Sefer and captures it. So he says, this is my city. Who's gonna live next door? Whoever lives next door gets to be my son-in-law. So Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's kinsman, another Kenizzite, captured it, so he gave him his daughter Achsah as a wife. Now when she came to him, she persuaded Othniel to ask her father for a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, what do you need? Give me a blessing, she said, for you have given me land in the Negev. You should also give me springs of water. So he gave her upper and lower springs. Caleb's faith was not only words, but action. Imagine doing this at the age of 85. Caleb was a follower, not of fear, but of faith. There is an important contrast here and also in the Haftorah, because in Numbers 14, it said, all through the night, the entire community raised up their voices. The people wept. All Bnei Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole community said, if only we died in Egypt, if only we died in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be like plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? And they said to each other, let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt. They're right there. They're on the border. The 10, as well as so many of the children of Israel, were ruled by fear. A little bit of a side note, and this is an entire message on itself. Be very careful what you say when you're talking to God, even if it's just complaining. Because they said, if only we died in the wilderness, and God said, okay. As surely as I live, said the Lord, I will do to you just as I heard you say in my ears. So they complained directly to God, and God said, okay, you'll get what you said is going to happen. In this wilderness, your bodies will drop, every one of you 20 years of age and older, who was numbered in the census and grumbled against me. Not one of you will enter the land about which I lifted my hand to make a home for you, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. As for your children, whom you said would be like plunder, I will bring them in, and they will experience the land you spurned. But your bodies will drop in the wilderness. Your children will be herdsmen in the wilderness 40 years. They will suffer because of your unfaithfulness until your corpses are consumed in the wilderness. For 40 years, corresponding to the 40 days you explored the land, 1 year for each day, you will suffer for your iniquities and know my hostility. I, the Lord, have spoken, and certainly will I do this to the wicked community banding together against me in this wilderness. They will meet their end, and they will die. Another side note. Even though they, along with their complaint, they said, well, our children are going to be killed and plundered, God did not punish the children there in that way for their parents' actions, which we see elsewhere, that God does not punish children for their parents' sins and vice versa. Now, the children did have to go through the wilderness, but they didn't die of old age out there. Everyone at this time, 20 years, every adult, 20 years of age and older, died by the time 40 years had passed. But we can see that what we say is important, especially when we're talking to God. Remember in Proverbs 18, it says, death and life are in control of the tongue. Those who indulge it will eat its fruit. So we see the people here, aside from Joshua and Caleb, decided to be ruled by fear. Now, it's not a sin to be afraid. What is a sin is saying that my fear is too much for God to handle. By doing so, you're saying God is weaker than the world and its trials, and there are things he can't handle. Let's look at someone else who was afraid and yet chose to follow faith over fear. Just so happens this person was not born Jewish but became a convert and had an important place in history and was in this week's Haftorah. In Joshua 2, before they lay down, Rahab came up to them on the roof, and she said to the men, I know that Adonai has given you the land. Dread of you has fallen on us, and all the inhabitants of the land are melting in fear before you. For we have heard how Adonai dried up the water of the Sea of Reeds before you when you came out of Egypt. That was 40 years before, and they heard about it and they're still afraid. And what you did to the two kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. This happens later. By the way, Sihon and Og were the kings of the Moabites and the Amorites, I believe. I think it was Og who was also a giant, and he was so big that he had to have an iron bed because the regular bed wouldn't support his weight. When we heard about it, our hearts melted, and no spirit remained anymore in anyone because of you. For Adonai your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. This is a non-Jew speaking. So now please swear to me by Adonai, since I dealt kindly with you, you will deal kindly with me and my father's house. Give me a true sign you will spare the lives of my father, my mother, my brothers, and my sisters, and all who belong to them, and save our lives from death. The men said to her, our life for yours. If you don't report this business of ours, then it will be when Adonai gives us the land. This is the two spies that say, when Adonai gives us the land, not if, when, that we will deal kindly and loyally with you. Then, and it wasn't immediately, by the way, it's like 4 or 5 chapters later, because there's other stuff they had to do before they went to Jericho. The men said to her, we will be released from this oath that you made us swear, unless when we come into the land you tie this line of scarlet thread in the window, through which you lowered us down, and gather to yourself in the house your father, mother, brothers, and your father's household. Whoever goes out of the doors of the house into the street, his blood will be on his own head, and we will be innocent. But whoever is with you in the house, his blood will be on our head if any hand is laid on him. But if you divulge this business of ours, then we will be released from your oath you have made us swear. So she said, according to your words, so be it. Then she sent them away, and after they'd gone, she tied the scarlet cord to the window. So she didn't know how long they were going to be, but as soon as they left, she did what they said. And then 4 chapters later, in chapter 6, Joshua said to the 2 men who spy out the land, go to the harlot's house and bring the woman and all who belong to her as you swore to her. So the young spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, mother, relatives, and all who belonged to her. All her relatives they brought out and put them outside the camp of Israel. Which means not only Rahab, but her whole family had enough faith to listen to her. We don't even know their names, but we know that they listened to her. We know that later she married a man named Salmon and became the mother of a man named Boaz. The same Boaz who married Ruth the Moabite, who was another convert, who had Obed, who had Jesse, who had David, and became the line of Messiah. So Rahab was in the line of Messiah. So you have Caleb, Rahab, and I even mentioned Ruth. All 3 were not born into the covenant. All 3 had plenty to fear. Caleb personally saw giants. Rahab heard the stories of what happened. And Ruth was a foreigner in a land strange to her. All 3 of them had good reason to fear, but all 3 of them chose faith. Not faith only in words, but faith in actions. Caleb personally conquered Hebron. Rahab was called out in James 2 as proving righteous by works when she welcomed the messengers and sent them out another way. She put herself in a lot of danger protecting them. And Ruth cared for Naomi and followed her instructions. So fear is normal. Fear is an emotion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But no matter who we are, we need to remember to place our faith in God over fear. Our God is greater than things of this world, so we must act out that faith to overcome any sort of fear, no matter who we are or where we came from. And I think that is an important thing to take away, that we've got from this Torah and Haftorah 2 very good examples of converts who decided to follow God, who were confronted by fear and chose actions in faith to God rather than fear. I think it's really telling with Rahab, because not only did she choose faith in God, she had only heard stories about God before. Caleb had heard stories, and he and his father joined. Rahab had only heard stories from a distance, and as soon as she had the opportunity, she says, I want this God. So that's why James said this was a woman of great faith. That showed her faith with what she did. So we've got two very good role models this week to look at. Whenever anything happens that we're worried or afraid of, just know that we have to have faith, because having faith and acting on that faith is declaring that our God is greater than whatever fear or worry comes to this world. And unfortunately, next week, they still didn't learn their lesson. Because we get more problems next week when you read for that. By the way, the very end of the Torah portion, remember what happened is they said, well, we don't want to go. And God said, okay, you're going to wander 40 years. And after that, they said, well, now we want to try. Right. And God said, you lost your chance. They tried anyway. They got beaten and came back. However, after that, what did God give them? He gave them 2 commandments. He gave them the commandments of the challah, how to do grain offerings, and he gave them the commandments of the tzitzit. It's important that the fact that he gave 2 commandments after this is a showing of forgiveness, because he's not going to give commandments to someone he doesn't care about. And this tzitzit, the reason this exists, it says, whenever you see it, you're supposed to remember the commandments. So when you see it, it's supposed to remind you. Like, oh yeah, I remember not to do that. Oh yeah, I remember to do this. So that's the point of the tzitzit, is a reminder of the commandments. And a lot of modern ones don't have blue thread like it's supposed to. The reason for that is because the blue they used back there was made from a certain kind of snail. And because we believe that, well, for the longest time, people believed that the snail was extinct. And they didn't want to use the wrong snail. So they said, well, we don't want to use the wrong snail, so we're just not going to dye it. Fairly recently, they've rediscovered what they think might be that snail. It's a sea snail, so it lives at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, so it's not like it's easy to get to. But as we saw with the tabernacle, there were sea creatures involved in the building of the tabernacle. Not only the blue dyes, but also tachash skins. Tachash was usually translated as sea cow. We don't know if it's the same as the manatees that are alive today, but the belief is that it was a sea creature with very beautiful skin, because it was used for the covering of the tabernacle. If you want to go really crazy, some of the commentators say it had flashing rainbow skin. That I think might be a little too far, but it could. All we know that it was a sea creature that had a beautiful skin, and it could have been dolphin. It could have been something, because it could have been something else related. But that's the reason, if you ever wonder why some do, but most tzitzit don't have blue. The other reason is they say, well, because the temple's destroyed, we'll put the blue on once the temple's back. That's what some say. But it's important to know sometimes what the traditions are. There's nothing wrong with not having it. It would be nice to have the proper blue, but that's another thing, that if you use a blue that is the wrong shade of blue, that's also a bad witness. Because someone will say, well, what is with your weird tzitzit, and why is it not proper? It's the same reason I personally don't wear the belt loop ones. Because I don't want to be a negative witness to any Jews who see it and say that's not a proper tzitzit. What's wrong? Same reason why I have to have a standard one. This one, by the way, this thing I got in Israel back in 2005, so it's a little old. But that'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'yihunecha. Yisah Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom, his peace. B'Shem Sar Shalom, in the name of the Prince of Peace, Yeshua Mashiachenu, Yeshua our Messiah. And let everyone say, Amen.